Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena. This week we're going to continue working on Ava's honey-do list, and we're also going to go on a 2,000-mile road trip to pick up some new tools in my favorite color, blue. A quick little update on the hurricane-damaged catamaran project. All the paperwork is in progress and we are ready to transfer funds to Brian, the previous owner. So in the next couple of weeks, I hope to be able to declare this hunk of fiberglass ours. This is my Bosch 150 Turbo Sander. This thing is 7 years old and it's seen hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of sanding. She's looking a little rough around the edges, but I absolutely love this sander. It's fast, it's got a nice big pad, 6 inches or 150 millimeters. It's got great dust extraction, although there's a bit of a DIY fix on there right now. And of course it also has the turbo mode. It's not often I use the turbo mode, but it is a nice feature. Years ago, when I was in the midst of all the oh glorious sanding here aboard Athena, I came up with this t-shirt idea here. And if you look at the graphics on there, that is my 150 Turbo. I didn't add the Bosch logo that's normally here because I didn't want to get into copyright issues, but this is very clearly a 150 Turbo. I've had different sanders over the years, but the 150 Turbo has always been my favorite, and it was kind of my gateway into the blue Bosch tools. These are the remnants of the glory that once was. I used to have a lot of really spiffy tools, but when we moved on the boat and we left Denmark, I had to get rid of them because we didn't have enough room. My selection of tools here is somewhat limited, and also add to that the fact that the corded tools here are all 230 volts 50 hertz, which is not going to play nice with the 110 volts 60 hertz at the boatyard. So hence the need for new glorious tools. Thanks to a really nice guy named Phil, whom I crossed paths with down in Trinidad, there should be a bunch of tools waiting for me in Texas. The only slight challenge is that it's 1,000 miles from here to there. A 2,000-mile road trip is asking quite a bit of a 23-year-old car, even if it is the spiffy-mobile. Now, the previous owner of this lovely CRV couldn't recall when they had last had the timing belt replaced, so we're going to have that replaced tomorrow just to be on the safe side. Also, we have a little bit of a sound coming from the suspension. I'm hoping it's just a sway bar link, something simple like that. I would absolutely love to be able to do more of the work on my car myself, but it is so dang hot outdoors here in Florida during the summer that I shudder at the thought. Now, if you have like an indoor garage or indoor place, just somewhere where I can get out of the sun for a little bit to do the work on the car, and you're willing to let me use that space for just a few hours if I need to do the brakes or something like that, I would love to hear from you. So go ahead and leave a comment down below. On this little road trip, I am going to take full advantage of this awesome Honda CRV feature. I believe this feature is unique to the first generation of the Honda CRVs. It's not completely level, but it is flat, and I've sure as heck slept in worse places than this. I think sleeping in the car will be a fun little added bonus to this adventure, and also I am far too cheap to pay $100 a night for a hotel. While we're waiting for the mechanic to do his magic, I might as well get started on one of Ava's little to-do jobs, this beautiful hole. This is an inspection port for our 200-liter diesel tank underneath the kitchen island. The purpose of this opening is just to be able to see what's going on in there before potentially having to lift the whole kitchen island. I want to make a little hatch in a similar style to the one we have here by the companionway. Fortunately, I already had some leftover Iruko from James's amazing workshop in the UK, so all I had to order was a tiny piece of teak trim. Here at the Yacht Club there is a little workshop that comes equipped with some basic tools. The other day I spotted an old miter saw in the corner and I thought it might be perfect for this little project. The saw is not really in pristine shape and it seemed to be stuck at 90 degrees. My friend Josh happened to walk past and together we devised a somewhat brutish plan for getting the saw unstuck. After a couple of fine adjustments, I made a quick test cut, and this is where my plans for the afternoon collapsed. Well, this didn't quite work out. The miter saw up at the workshop there had quite a pronounced wobble to it and did cause a lot of tear out. So yeah, as much as I would like to fix this little issue before going on the road trip, I think it's better to wait until next week, and maybe I can get my hands on a better miter saw. It would be a shame to waste such a nice piece of teak. Even though my plans for the miter saw up in the workshop failed horribly, which actually does a great job of underlining why it's important to have your own decent quality tools, I still think the space up there, the workshop itself, is going to come in super useful in the next couple of weeks. Not because of the tools that are up there, but because of that big flat table, because I've ordered the materials I need to finally fix the headliner. So that means we can beautify it and get rid of the sagging over here, which has been driving me nuts for years. Today's good news is that the car is fixed, or the timing belt has been replaced, and yeah, we should be ready to start the road trip bright and early tomorrow morning. I've locked off the boat. I've got our trash here, taking that out. There's just one more thing we have to do, and then we can hit the road. I'll turn off the water so I don't accidentally sink the boat while I'm not here, and that's it. We should be ready to leave. I think it's about 4 hours until our first stop, which I think is Florida's first ever suspension bridge. The road trip started out on big, straight, boring roads, but after about 20 miles I was able to get onto smaller roads that are always more interesting. Oh wait, I think that was a suspension bridge. Hot diggity. That was the first 4 hours worth of driving. We have arrived at the Hal W. Adams Suspension Bridge, which has the distinct honor of being Florida's first suspension bridge, at least according to the internet. And it was built in 1947. The obvious question that springs to mind here is, of course, do I care about suspension bridges? And yes I do. Everybody does. They're awesome. But also, the reason I came here was just because that way I get to go on some of the smaller roads instead of all of the big 6-lane mayhem, unpleasant driving nonsense. The smaller roads are much more fun. In terms of suspension bridges, I would rate this a solid 7.5 out of 10. Actually, after poking around a bit, it turns out this suspension bridge has a lot to offer. Let's up that score to 8.5 out of 10. Let's get back into the blessed air conditioning and figure out what the next stop is going to be. Fingers crossed for somewhere with a pea palace. It looks like it's a little bit over an hour to a Costco where we can top up the fuel tank with more dinosaur squeezings and perhaps use the pea palace. I'm still figuring out things in the US, but I have already learned that I love Costco. Stopping here for gas was really just an excuse to go inside. The thing about having an old car is you need to appreciate when you see stuff that's working. For instance, here you can see that the check engine light is working. That's great news, especially when it's something simple like an O2 sensor that needs to be replaced. Good morning, guys. It is the next morning, and last night there was a horrible failure on my part. I was supposed to sleep in the car, but I made a little Captain Dum-Dum mistake. I knew it was going to be hot inside of the car without the air conditioning on, so I picked up one of these 12-volt fans here. Figured that could give me a little bit of air movement at least. I found a nice place to hide the car where nobody could see me, put the bed arrangement down, and that's when I realized my horrible mistake. I hadn't even considered this, but of course this turned out to be the case. The cigarette outlet doodad plug there on the Honda CR-V are wired by default to only provide power when the ignition is on. From what I've read, it's not legal to sleep on the side of the road in Florida, so I was trying to hide away and be as discreet as possible. But yeah, that's kind of hard to do if you need to run the engine. For a brief second, I thought I could just get away with engaging the ignition without turning the car on, and that does indeed provide power. But there's no way for me to turn off this super bright display here, meaning lighting up the inside of the car like a Christmas tree. So yeah, that wasn't gonna work. So around midnight I gave up and looked on Google to find the cheapest possible hotel within an hour or so. And this place popped up, Residence Hub Inn and Suites. It was, I think, $44 for a night. That was a really good deal, and I think this is one of those places where it's good as long as you don't look too close. Like for instance, the room seemed clean, but kinda clean. And then the most weird thing was there was sand in my bed when I pulled back the sheets. So yeah, let's not think about why that would be the case. I've dropped off my key here at the reception, and for what this place is, I don't think it's a bad deal. I mean, 44 bucks is pretty hard to beat. Now, a little side quest has popped up, and it's about 8 hours from here. As I mentioned earlier, I've ordered the materials I need for the new headliner. The glue I'm going to be using is designed to be sprayed with a spray gun, and Harbor Freight has this one here on clearance for just under 10 bucks. According to the website, it was out of stock in all of Florida, but it was in stock in this obscure little place next to the Mississippi. So yeah, why don't we give that a go. It is a swift 7 hours later, lots of driving, but ta-da! It wasn't that far out of my way to pick these up here, and these should be perfect for spraying that adhesive. But yeah, I think the savings on these actually more than paid for the gas for the detour. Plus I got to see some of middle of nowhere. On went the intrepid explorer through the woods, over the bridge, through the rain, and finally over the giant bridge. And just like that, I find myself here in Texas. The lovely Westsail 43 here behind me is Phil's boat. I crossed paths with Phil down in Trinidad because he was down there to do the sea trial for this very boat. He ended up getting it, and now it's here in Texas. During my little visit here, Phil offered that I could stay aboard his boat, which I'm super excited about because I've been on 3 separate Westsail 42s, but I've never been aboard a 43 before. They use the same molds for the 43s that they used for the 42s. I believe they built the 42s first and then started building the 43s. The big difference between the two models is that the 43 has an aft cockpit, whereas the 42 has a center cockpit. And here is that aft cockpit of the 43. Now, much like with the whole cat versus monohull debate, a lot of this comes down to a personal preference. Personally, I've always been partial to an aft cockpit. The cockpit here on the 43 is slightly smaller than Athena's cockpit, but especially aboard a boat, everything is a compromise, and that slightly smaller cockpit just means that there is more room down below. And there is certainly something to be said for a nice tight cockpit. If the seas get lumpy, it's always easy to grab onto something. Coming down below, we have a ginormous U-shaped galley that looks super spiffy. Across from the galley, there is a little nav station. Then there are some settees here with bunks up under the side decks. If we continue forward, there is going to be a head here on port side and a little V-berth here all the way forward. The head is a wet head, meaning there is no separation between the head and the shower, but it is a decent sized head. I in no way feel cramped in here. Moving aft again, over on starboard side, we have an aft cabin, and it is a very nice sized aft cabin. This is where I'm going to be spending the night, and to me, this looks nice and roomy. If we go over to the port side here, we have a little quarter berth. Between the Westsail 42 and the Westsail 43, personally, I would probably lean towards the 43, but then again, like I mentioned, I personally do prefer an aft cockpit, so yeah, but this is a pretty spiffy boat. While I'm here, Phil and I are going to work on a couple small projects. One of them is going to be to replace the instrument panel out in the cockpit, and that includes a brand new wiring harness. To put in the new panel, of course, the old panel have to retire first. With a bit of gentle persuasion, the old panel popped right out. The wiring looked pretty decent with only a single mystery wire not connected to anything. It turned out the new panel is actually slightly smaller than the hole left behind by the old panel, but that's an easy fix. More about that later. Engine access aboard the Westsail 43 is very good. That made getting the new wiring harness in place super easy. There's also a good amount of room inside of the engine compartment. Not as much as on the 42, but still very good. After running the harness to the sensors on the engine, I had to take a quick timeout to not only call the manufacturer of the panel, but also call my friend Josh from earlier in the video to clear up some confusion. and then
Right.
the blue one that goes uh, to the field on the external regulator. Having made all of the connections and being 98.5% sure everything was correct, we cranked the engine. We think the alarm is due to reusing the old water temperature switch. With the switch disconnected, the alarm stopped, but the needle on the tack didn't move, not even a slight bit, when revving the engine. As you guys might recall, a while back, by the time you guys watched this video, we had some issues with the AdSense on our YouTube account. And that stuff all happened on my last morning in Texas. So I got completely distracted and forgot to shoot any video, and I drove all the way back to Cape Canaveral in one go to get started fixing that issue. Now, as of recording this video, the issue is still ongoing, but it'll be a while until you guys see this video, so hopefully by then the issue will be solved. We had some degree of luck in getting Phil's new engine control panel to work. The tack we didn't manage to get working, and it's kind of weird because when I measured between the stator output on the alternator and ground, there was an AC signal, and whenever Phil would rev the engine, that AC signal would go up, and we rev down, it would go down, just as you would expect. So I think the reason we didn't get the gauge to work is just a matter of configuring the gauge. I couldn't find any good documentation for this gauge on the interwebs, and in all fairness, it has been like 12 years since I last fiddled around with one of these gauges, so yeah, the answer might be obvious. It may just be me that's a little rusty. As far as the issue with the new control panel being slightly smaller than the hole left behind on the boat from the old control panel, there's a super simple solution to that. I've simply just sketched up a new control panel that's slightly bigger than the old one, so it'll cover up the edges from the old one. And we're just gonna have this laser cut, and then Phil can move all of the new gauges to the new panel here, and it'll look brand new and nice and professional. I wish I could have stayed until the engine panel was fully functional, but at least I think it's just a matter of the configuration of the tack gauge, and then there is a water temperature switch that needs to be replaced. So yeah, fingers crossed. I had a really great time hanging out with Phil, and of course it's always fun to mess around on old boats. Now, Phil is the president of a company called Lone Star Equipment Solutions. They sell a lot of tools, and they also sell a lot of supplies for plumbers and electricians, so I'll include a link for their website down in the description. So a big giant thank you to Phil for letting me stay on his boat and get to see a Westsail 43 up close, and of course also for all of the amazing tools here. Hopefully you guys will see these get put to use in the not too distant future. Quick little side note here, before anybody accuses me of being colorblind when it comes to tools, I will admit my favorite color is blue, but if I read good reviews or something, I am not opposed to trying a different color. Like for instance, I was reading reviews of shop vacs, and this thing had really good reviews, so I picked this up yesterday here at Lowe's, I think it was, and yeah, it's not blue. And on that positive note of tool equality, I will end this week's video here. I hope to see all you guys back here aboard Athena next week for, yeah, I don't know what the heck we'll get up to, but we'll figure it out. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!